Hello and welcome to this video by Mega Train Lover. Today, as you can see, we are in Train Sim 2020 and I'm going to be reviewing a product which was released recently by Bossman Games, and it is none other than, if we just pan the camera around, the rebuilt Merchant Navy class. Now, before we get on to the actual pack, I'm just going to give you a brief history about the Merchant Navy class. So, the Merchant Navy class were built by the Southern Railway to the design of Oliver Bulleid, and there were 30 of them built between 1942 and 1950. And they were built for express passenger trains, although originally, in order for them to be built during wartime, they had to be classified as mixed traffic locomotives. So during the war they actually had to prove themselves capable of hauling goods trains. But after the war they became almost exclusive to express passenger trains. They did haul goods trains on the odd occasion, but they were mostly express passenger engines. Anyway, when they were first introduced, they were very, very innovative. They looked different to what these are. These are basically the rebuilt examples. So when they first appeared with a air-smoothed casing, which earned them the nickname Spam Cans, and they also had a chain-driven valve gear, which was designed by Oliver Bulleid. So for their time, they were extremely innovative. It was said that Bulleid had actually developed these engines about 20 years ahead of their time. The problem was, though, that with all these innovations came a list of faults. First of all, the air-smoothed casing pushed maintenance costs up the roof, through the roof rather, causing the accountants of the Southern Railway and then British Railways an absolute headache. Then there was an enormous problem with the chain-driven valve gear, which tended to be very, very unreliable. The coal consumption was also very high, and there were also several other problems with cracking and components cracking, because a lot of components on these were welded rather than riveted, because it was new technology at the time. But obviously it was so new that there wasn't too much experience with it. In fact, there was an incident in 1953 where one of the merchant navies, the axle actually broke, and the rest of all members of the class had to be temporarily withdrawn pending investigation. Now, due to the list of faults, BR had actually considered scrapping these engines, but then the engines had one major strength, which was their boilers. Their boilers were excellent. So BR took the decision to rebuild these engines, and the first engine was rebuilt in 1956 and all 30 were rebuilt by 1960. So when they were rebuilt, they gained this form, the one which you see here. So this is more of a BR standard like form. So as you can see, they've completely gotten rid of the air-smoothed casing, and they replaced the chain-driven valve gear with conventional Walschaerts motion. They've also added a few other bits and pieces. Some bits they did keep off the original engines, such as these box-pock wheels, which were developed by Bulleid. These were found to be very, very reliable, so they kept those. They also obviously kept the whistle, and the boilers were exactly the same, because as mentioned before, the boilers were excellent. Sadly though, the rebuild proved too little too late to save these engines, and by 1967 these were actually one of the last steam engines, if not the last ones, to run on the southern region in July 1967. And so by that time all 30 members of the class had been withdrawn. Now amazingly though, 11 have been preserved. Out of the 11 preserved, only one, which is Clan Line, 35028 Clan Line, was the only example to be saved for preservation directly from BR, and it has basically operated on the main line since 1973. It's actually been probably the most active member of the class in preservation, and it's also the only member of the class that has run in every decade since it was built, and is by far and away the most popular member of the class. The other 10 examples, so as mentioned, Clan Line was the only one to come directly from BR. The other 10 examples were all sent to Barry scrapyard and then rescued from there. And one of them, which is number 35029 Ellerman lines, was saved from Barry and sent to York and then sectioned up to basically show the internal workings. So that one's still as it is, and I don't think it's going to ever run again. The other 9 examples which were saved from Barry, 3 of them have run in, no, 4 of them have run in preservation, these being 35005 Canadian Pacific, 35006 Peninsula and Oriental Steam Navigation Company, 35018 British India Line, and then 35027 Port Line. Only 35006 and 35018 are currently operational, as is Clan Line. Canadian Pacific and Port Line are undergoing overhauls. The other examples, which I didn't mention, they're either awaiting restoration from scrapyard condition or are undergoing restoration from scrapyard condition. But the problem with the merchant navies is that they're so big and so heavy that they're very, very expensive to restore, and also as well, they're not very suitable for heritage railways simply due to their weight. But I mean, hopefully it'll be nice to see. It'll be nice to see, you know, maybe 1 or 2 more merchant navies. One of the merchant navies being restored is 35011, which I'm actually quite excited about, because that particular 35011 is general steam navigation. That one is actually being restored back into its original spam can condition. So that will be very, very interesting to see how that one turns out. So that's the Merchant Navy class history. Now let's have a look at the actual model. Now, as mentioned before, this was made by Bossman Games, and I'm just going to say this straight off the bat. This is, for me personally, the best steam locomotive model ever designed for Train Simulator. And I don't think there'll be any other steam locomotive to beat this. Honestly, it is just brilliant. I mean, just look at this one. Just look at it. It's almost as if it's real. I mean, apart from the texturing, but that's because, well, that's obviously because I don't have, I mean, only if you zoom in then it looks fine. But honestly, just in general, the texturing is brilliant. I mean, wow. Let's just look at that. Absolutely amazing. Other details which I really like, the dampers here. The damper doors actually open and close. So by default they're always open, and I do recommend that you keep them open to allow the steaming capabilities of the engine to be better. Because in real life they open them to allow air to go through the firebox. The brake rigging is also animated, so when you apply the brakes, as they are now, the brake rigging, which you can see here on the outside of the wheels, that moves, as well as the brake blocks, and when you release the brakes, they move as well. They move off the wheels, obviously dependent on you know, whether you're applying or releasing the brakes. The sand pipes are animated as well, so when you drop sand you'll see the sand come out. But yeah, all in all, it's just brilliant. I mean, it's just brilliant. I'll show you on another engine. I'll show you on Clan Line just over there the different features, because you can customize all these different head codes. But obviously the Southern engines all had these head codes, so you can customize them, and also you can customize the headboards as well. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to go through the 6 different variations which you get in this pack. So the first variation is what I like to call the simple version. This is basically BR Brunswick green, and it is in clean conditions, as you can see, completely pristine, as if it's only just rolled out of the works after being rebuilt. The example I'm using here is 35014 Netherland line. The reason why I've got this one here is because I've got a Hornby model of Netherland lines, so I thought, why not put it in game just to see what it looks like. But yeah. So you get this is the BR Brunswick green. And you also get 4 different types of tenders. You get this here is I think this is the 5,100 gallon. I'm not entirely sure which one's which, but the 4 different types of tenders, you get the 5,000 gallon, the 5,100 gallon, the 5,250 gallon, and the 6,000 gallon tender. And obviously it's not specific to a loco. You can you know, sort of mix and match. And if you're really into, like, if you really know what engine ran with what kind of tender during what period, then you know, then it's absolutely up to you. All tenders come with either an early emblem or a late crest. Although if you are modelling these engines, then you'll mostly be using the late crest, because only the examples that were rebuilt in 1956, those had the early emblem, as you can see on Netherland line. All the other examples, from the ones rebuilt from 1957, they all featured the late crest, and subsequently all the ones which started with an early emblem, they received the late crest as well. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to jump into Netherland line just to show you the cab. So the cab of Netherland line, this is standard across all the variations except for one, which I'll get onto in a second. So let's jump into the cab. So here's the cab of the Merchant Navy. So as you can see, beautifully well detailed. You've got the vacuum brake here, the reverser, cylinder cocks, regulator, and you've got the steam brake as well just there, which that particular one, it only works when you're running light engine. When you're running with coaches or wagons, when you basically set it, because using the page up and page down keys, you can set the brake mode, so you can go either, so by default it's always set to passenger brake, basically braking passenger rolling stock, and but you can change it to like sort of braking freight stock. So either if the freight is either fully fitted or, you know, half of it's fitted, you can change it, and also you can change it to light engine. All the engines come with AWS as standard, as you can see the AWS box just up there, and the blower just in the middle. The automatic fireman can be turned on either by using Control R or by lifting the fireman's seat just over there. The only operational feature on the tender is the handbrake. Obviously there's no water, being a Southern engine, there's no water scoop since none of them had any. Yeah, so you can cycle through the views. And also, being a Merchant Navy class, well, it is a Merchant Navy, but this one does have a steam generator, which you can isolate using this valve here. And also, you can see the light switches just up there. So this light here, the reverser light, it lights up a small light just above the reverser, just above where the numbers are on the reverser. The center light lights up the gauges, so all these gauges here, and then this light, the one on the right, lights up the cab lights, which are just here. They're labelled as floodlights, but they're basically just the cab lights just up here. So when you switch those off, as you can see, the cab just goes dark. But yeah, so that's basically the simple version. And you can choose between all 30 members of the class, so from 35001 channel packet all the way up to 35030 Elder Dempster lines. So yeah, this is BR Brunswick Green, a clean version. Next we come on to I've only made 2 of these engines drivable because I'm going to show you their cabs as well. Now the next version, we've got the weathered and named variant. So the example I'm using here is 35006 Peninsula and Oriental Steam Navigation Company, or PNDO, just to make things more simpler. So as you can see, the weathering has been modelled very, very nicely. You can see all the grime on the boiler and around the wheels. So this is basically the condition they were in sort of around 1965 all the way up to the end of steam on the Southern, when the maintenance of steam engines started lacking due to the fact that obviously they were being withdrawn. So the thinking behind this was obviously, you know, why bother maintaining them to high standards when they're going to be withdrawn anyway. The only difference between this and the clean version's cab is obviously the cab here is much more weathered. Now, stupidly, I've not put a driver in this, like basically make it drivable so I can't show you the cab. But just, I mean, you can see the cab, and you can see how the controls are a lot dirtier than on the clean version. And that's just basically realistically showing what the cabs looked like on these engines. Obviously, they did keep the cabs clean somewhat more than the engine, because, you know, at the end of the day, the crew were at the end of the day, the cab was essentially like your home. For the crew, it was basically their home, because, you know, they would have worked, you know, 8 or 10 hours on these engines, so they had to keep it cleaner. Otherwise, obviously, working in a, you know, very dirty environment is rather unpleasant. What you can also see is that the lights don't work. This was standard. Obviously, as I mentioned, the maintenance started lacking. Although, actually, it could just be no. My mistake. It could just be because the driver's not turned on, because I've not activated the driver, so the generator's not on. But I think if the generator's on, then the lights should work as normal. Now, recently, Bossman Games updated this, and by default, they all show these this head code here. I think it looks nice. But you can customize this. I'll show you on another example the different head codes, and also the headboards as well. So yeah, this is the weathered and named version. Now, the reason why I say named is because we come on to the third version, which, as you can see, has no nameplates. This is accurate because in their last 3 years of service, a lot of them didn't run with nameplates. Like, they would only run with nameplates if they were hauling a more prestigious express train. Otherwise, they just didn't bother putting nameplates on if they were running with, you know, just a regular semi-fast service to Basingstoke or Bournemouth or wherever. So yeah, so basically the example I'm using here is 35013, which I forgot what its name was in BR days, but yeah, 35013. So as you can see, the weathering is exactly the same as on 35006 here. The only difference, of course, being that there's no nameplate. But I just absolutely love how they basically represented where the nameplate would go. And also, as you can see, the boiler lining just suddenly stops there, because naturally when they were repainting this, they didn't put the lining there, because, well, obviously the nameplates would be there anyway, so, you know, why bother painting that? So yeah, these three versions are what I like to call the in-service versions. So, but the clean version you can also use to represent the preserved examples: 35005, 35006, 35018, and 35027, the ones which have run in preservation. You can also represent the ones which have not run in preservation yet, if you want to, obviously, sort of make a scenario where you're showing a glimpse into the future of what, you know, Shore Seville will look like on the main line, or not general steam navigation, because that will be restored back into its original condition. Or if you want to show what like 35025 Brocklebank line will look like on the main line, you know, sky's the limit basically with this pack. And so yeah, and also one thing I need to mention is, with 35018, because 35018 British India Line was the first member of the class to be rebuilt, it does have some slight detail differences, which will automatically be applied once you put the number of the engine in the scenario editor. I've got a model of 35018 just down there, so I'll I mean, you might spot it. I don't know exactly what the detail differences are. They're very, very small, but there are slight differences because British India Line was effectively the prototype of the rebuilds. So yeah, these are what I call the working work examples, because obviously they ran like this during BR days, and latterly like this in their last couple of years in service, again with BR. I mean, there was only one company they ran under. The rebuild examples only ran under BR, obviously. So yeah, these three are the working days examples. Now we move on to what I like to classify as the preservation examples. Now the first one is probably a lot of people's favourite in this simulator. It is Canadian Pacific 35005. As you can see, it's in the beautiful BR Express Passenger Blue, which is a fictional livery. Now the reason why I say fictional is it's not for this simulator, it's not exclusive to the simulator. Canadian Pacific did run like this in the late 90s, early 2000s. But the reason why it is fictional is because the rebuilt merchant navies never ran with this livery in service. The unrebuilt examples did run in this livery, obviously before they began to be rebuilt. But basically, by the time the rebuild started in 1956, this livery was basically outdated, and so BR repainted all of their express passenger locomotives to Brunswick green. But in the 1990s, the people owning Canadian Pacific had an idea to basically see what one of the rebuilt examples would have looked like had the BR Express Passenger Blue lived on for slightly longer. And I'll honestly say it looks really, really nice. I mean, I'm a big fan of the Express Passenger Blue anyway, but I mean on Canadian Pacific, it just really suits her. Really does. So this is Canadian Pacific in her late 90s, early 2000s condition. It's got the same cab as the BR Brunswick Green Clean variant, which we just looked at over there, and this one's also got vacuum brakes only. The only difference, of course, from the rest of the class is its blue livery. Yeah, so I mean, a lot of people. I mean, I've seen how loads of people really like this livery. Which I'm not, and I don't blame them. It is a beautiful livery and it works so well on the merchant navies. So yeah, that is 35005 Canadian Pacific in the BR Express Passenger Blue. Now next we come over to by far the most famous member of the class, and also probably the most loved member of the class. It is 35028 Clan Line in her current preserved condition. This example is much more unique to the rest of the engines because this has air brakes, as you can see from the 2 extra pipes there. And if we go to the tender, this one has a 6,000 gallon tender, but it has been specially modified because, as you can see, this one has a grill, whereas the other tenders don't. As you can see on Canadian Pacific, doesn't have a grill. Basically underneath this grill is where the pump is located for the air brakes, and also there's a door here on the back for the maintenance crew to access the air pump if needed. So yeah, and what we're going to do, we're going to jump into Clan Line. So I'm just going to show you the difference. This one also has a unique cab to the rest of the locomotives, the rest of the merchant navies rather. So yeah, here we go. So here it looks fairly similar to the other examples. Well, almost the same really. It's only when you go down and you get the air brake handle here. So the AWS reset button has moved here. So I mean, it's still up here as well, still up here just like on the other examples, but the driver now presses it here in real life. And you also got the air brake handle, and on this one you can also change between either vacuum brakes or air brakes. I'd recommend using especially if you're running with the support coach, which I'll show you in a second. I highly recommend air brakes because the support coach is air brakes. So yeah, basically. The other difference, so you got air brakes. The other difference is that on the AWS box you now have TPWS fitted. As you can see, you've got the 3 extra, well, you've got 1 button here for the train stop override, and then the 2 lights for the brake demand and the temporary isolation fault. And obviously TPWS is not present on the other examples. You also have the AWS light here, which whenever the AWS horn sounds, this flashes. The light switches are the same, and if you look on the back, you also have a non-functioning GSMR radio, which, I mean, although it's non-functioning, it is still a really nice touch. I mean, it would be nice if it actually functioned, but to be honest, there's so much detail on this engine that it kind of makes up for that. I mean, that would only be a very minor thing. Plus, a lot of people would forget to do it anyway because, yeah, for obvious reasons. I mean, it's behind you. Only if you were a very experienced crew member on the clan line, you probably wouldn't forget it, but yeah. So yeah, also as well, you've got the tops number and then the maximum speed going forward and in reverse, which is not present on the other examples, but it is on clan line because it represents how clan line appears now. So yeah, one thing I forgot to show you, all examples have a opening cab roof vent, which I'm just going to show you. Yep, there you go. It doesn't open very far, but that's on the merchant navy. That's basically on the merchant navies. One thing I do like about clan line's cab though is this pastry. It's such a nice touch. I mean, it's only a small detail and it doesn't do anything, like you can't eat it obviously, but it's just such a nice touch because it really shows you know, that this is a working steam engine. The other examples don't have this pastry. They've got this flask here, but not the pastry. I just think that is a really nice touch. To be honest, this is such a beautiful representation of clan line, which for me personally is one of the best kept locomotives in the country. I mean, the Merchant Navy Locomotive Preservation Society do such a good job in keeping this engine in tip-top shape. It is amazing. Absolute kudos to them. Bossman Games actually went to Stewart's Lane, which is in Battersea, where the society is based, and actually took references from clan line. But I mean, the fact that they included clan line as preserved is just absolutely phenomenal. Now we're going to have a look. I did briefly mention her support coach. I'm pleased to say that the support coach is included in the pack. This is Meet Mercator, and you've got the actual name of the Society of Merchant Navy Locomotive Preservation Society Limited. And well, there's not much to say. I mean, it is basically a reskinned version of the support coach that came with the Black Fives, with 44871, 45212 and 45407 Lancashire Fusilier. But that's not to say it looks bad. In fact, it looks awesome. The level of detail on this is really nice as well. And yeah, but obviously if you're running this, then realistically you'd have the support coach with you anyway. One thing you'll notice is you'll see a puff of steam come out from the back of the tender. That's coming from the air pump. You'll see it every now and again. You'll probably see it now. There we go. And you'll also hear the air pump. You can't hear the sounds at the moment because I'm doing the commentary here. But in the second half of this video, I'll be driving one of these engines. I won't spoil it. You'll see which one I'm going to be driving, but I'll be driving it on a scenario, and you'll hear the sounds there. But basically, every now and again, you'll hear the air pump sound, which is very realistic. So, one thing I'm just going to do now, before I show you the final version that you get in the pack, I'm going to show you the headboards and the head codes. So, by default, you get this head code here. These are the control 4 and 5 head codes. So yep, there we go. So basically, control and the number is for the front head codes. If you do control shift number, then it will do it on the rear of the tender. So if I do control shift 5, it will get rid of the it should get rid of this one here. Hopefully, there we go. Yeah, there we go. And also basically anything you want to do on the tender, you do Control Shift, and on the front of the engine it's just Control. So I'll show you the different head codes. So Control 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Let's get rid of those. Control 7 is basically a tail lamp in oil form, as you can see. Control 8 is the high intensity headlamp, which only features on the on mainline running. And Control 9 is the high intensity tail lamp, which obviously you'd only put if you're running this, if you're running backwards. And again, if you do Control Shift and then 8 and 9, it will show the high intensity lamps on the rear of the tender, and also Control Shift and 7 will show the tail lamp, the oiled tail lamp on the rear of the tender as well. In this pack you get 30 headboards. Recently they did an update, so they added 2 extras. So you got the Golden Arrow, the Night Ferry, and you get various other named expresses from the past and some from the present as well. In this very sort of standard headboard, which was seen on the merchant navies and the rest of the bully Pacifics, like the light Pacifics basically. You get the Canada, the Statesman, Union and Castle Express. You even got the Atlantic Coast Express, which obviously was a very famous express headed by these locomotives. I'll show you the extra 2 headboards which they recently added. So you get, obviously these expresses were not on the Southern, the Cumbria Mountain Express and the North Wales Coast Express, and neither was the Welsh Marchers Express. These are one of the preserved headboards. Strong Countryman, and the 2 which they added recently are not basically in this form. The 2 are the Scarborough Flyer and the Great Britain. Now I'm just going to leave it here, I'll just leave it. I'll just leave it on North Wales Coast Express. But yeah, so you get about 31 headboards, which is a very vast amount. And obviously, as you saw, you know, headboards which you use in preservation, but then also headboards if you want to use one of these engines in like the BR era, basically. So yeah, that is Clan Line in as preserved condition. The last condition, the last version which you get in this pack is this one right here. This is not Bodmin, as you can see by the nameplate. This is actually British India Line. So this livery, the story goes that obviously British India Line 35018 was one of the examples that was saved from Barry, and it returned to steam in 2017. When it ran out for test runs, it was painted in British Railways black, which is a livery it never wore in service, neither in rebuilt nor in original form. And also, as you can see, rather than painting its BR number of 35018, they painted her TOPS number of 98818 on the cab sides, and also they chalked it on the front. Oh, oops, wrong place. There we go. So they chalked 98818 on the front, and they also put Bodmin's nameplates on there. Basically, it was a sort of joke, because Bodmin is a West Country class, which is obviously the slightly smaller version of these. And Bodmin is rebuilt as well, so they look very, very similar. So it was sort of a trick to fool people that it is Bodmin, when in actuality it is obviously British India Line. But the fact that, I mean, this was only a one-off. It wore this livery for a very, very, very short time. It probably only wore this livery for like 1 or 2 test runs. But the fact that Bosman Games have actually modelled this, even though it was a one-off, is just fantastic. So yeah, the cab of this is exactly the same as on the one I showed you on Netherlands Line, just at the end. This one has vacuum brakes only, doesn't have air brakes. The real British India Line only has vacuum brakes as well. But the level of detail on this is really, really nice as well. Obviously the livery is more basic because it is unlined BR black, but you know what, it works well. honestly, in my opinion, BR Black looks really, really nice on these engines. I mean, obviously we're used to seeing them in Brunswick Green, but I mean, it looks really good in BR Black. And the fact that they've actually sort of modelled the chalking of the number on the smokebox door is really, really nice. So yeah, this is my review of the Merchant Navy pack by Bossman Games. All in all, I am extremely pleased with it. Now what we're going to do now is we're going to switch to another route, and I'm going to be driving one of these engines. I won't tell you which one, I don't want to spoil it. And you'll see me driving these engines in a scenario. I'll turn the mic off and you'll hear from the desktop audio the sounds. So see you in the second half of this video. Okay, so that was my review of the absolutely amazing Bosman Games Rebuild Merchant Navy class. Thank you very much for watching this review, and I shall see you in the next video. Goodbye.